Good afternoon. Welcome to the Doane Leadership Symposium, and we hope that this will be an immersive experience for you in the topic of leadership. I'm Doug Christensen, Director of the Education Specialist Program here at Doane. I work on the Lincoln campus. I'm pleased to introduce the people who represent Doane in a variety of ways, and especially with the branding that we are trying to elevate to guide us through what we do, is that we build leaders. We build leaders here on the campus, we build leaders off the campus, we build leaders in our communities, and we want to connect ourselves to leaders throughout the state and nation. We hope that this experience this afternoon will help you to find strategies to improve culture, to build and work with teams, and to create your brand. And again, we build leaders on the campus and throughout our communities. I'm pleased to introduce our first speaker, Lisa Utterback, and there's so many things I could tell you about Lisa Utterback because I had her as a student for 3.5 years. She was the hardest working student that I ever had, and she was my favorite. I shouldn't probably have said that. She was my favorite, but no, I didn't have a student that's ever worked as hard to do things right and to take advantage of all the things that were there in trying to build herself and developing as a leader. She's the Chief Officer of Student and Community Service in the Omaha Public Schools, where she's been for 22 years in various roles that included teacher, Title I coordinator, Dean of Students, Assistant Principal, and now Executive Director. She's also a proud graduate of the Omaha Public Schools, I think Central High School. One of the things that I admire most, and I hope you get to hear enough of the story about coming from the beginnings in terms of growing up in extreme poverty and adversity, she's developed into this wonderful individual who makes a contribution to the school, to the community, and to the lives of others. She graduated from the College of St. Mary's in '93, received her master's degree in ed leadership from Doane, and her education specialist degree from Doane. No one better represents Doane, in my opinion, than Lisa Utterback. Lisa?
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. As Dr. Christensen stated, I'm Lisa Utterback. I've been with the Omaha Public Schools for 22 years. I like to say that I've been with the district for 46. I started in pre-K and have just been a part of the Omaha Public Schools really my entire childhood and adult life. I will tell you, I am on Twitter. There is my Twitter handler, and so as I talk, I do a lot of tweeting about leadership, service, the importance of self, the importance of knowing your why, and impacting those that we can along the way. I would be remiss if I didn't take time to focus on, usually I speak on the importance of impact of students and education, but today I'm going to talk to you about the critical aspects of the work that you do as a leader, because whether you're a principal, a teacher, a dean, a coach, you are the CEO of whatever it is that you're leading. When I was a teacher teaching 5th grade, I was the CEO, Chief Academic Officer, Operations Officer, athletic coach of 25 kids every single year. And I say that because you are in a position when you are leading, whether it's students, teachers, or a school system, you have the profound position to impact the culture and the climate of everything that happens with people on your watch. Education today is different. It is not what it was when I was applying to go to college to get my bachelor's degree. When you think of the young people and the staff that we serve, the adversity that we face that impacts the success that we would achieve ranges from those individuals in poverty. When I talk about poverty today, I mean lack of food, stability, housing and clothing and shelter, the illiteracy that we see not just with our youth, but with our families that are newcomers to this country or parents that maybe didn't obtain degrees. I think of the high mobility and homelessness that we face. I know in the Omaha Public Schools we have about 54,000 students, and we have a high population of our youth that are in the foster care system. If you've been reading what's happening around the state and around the country with the foster care systems and the number of kids that do not have placements, you might be a little out of touch. When I think of the young people that are incarcerated or generational incarceration, I also think of the drug addiction, but there's lots of addictions that we're seeing that impact the success, or they're barriers that we have to address. When I talk about barriers, those are things that are in front of us, but if we don't recognize that they're there, we're oblivious and we're part of the problem. And then the language barriers. We have over, I think, 120 different languages in the Omaha Public Schools. And then obviously all of those things impact behaviors, whether positive or negative, they're behaviors. And when I think of all the trauma, the ACEs, the generational issues that we're seeing, they come out in our most safest and stable environments. Those are through our staff members. Those are through our students and through our families. Behavior is a form of communication. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about where we're at right now with the pandemic. 2 years ago in March of 2020, I remember being called down to Dr. Cheryl Logan's office to watch a webinar with an individual who was the head of the infectious disease through UNMC. And I started to learn about something called a pandemic. COVID-19. COVID-19 has changed everything, the way and the manner in which we do it. And I'm not just talking about in education, I'm talking about when you go to Starbucks at night and they're closed because they don't have an employee working the drive-through. When you go to a restaurant, the lack of staff that we have, to the teacher shortage, to the shortages of our certificated and classified staff, to the social emotional impacts that they've played on our students, our parents, but our staff. Our staff was sent home in March of 2020, and then the next contact that they had with kids was virtual learning, and then we went to a 3-2 blended model, and then back to 100%. And the impact that it had on our students that were at home dealing with a lot of adversity that they try to escape, to also the financial implications, to also the mental health and wellness. When I talk about health and wellness, I'm not just talking about physical, I'm talking about the mental, the social, and the emotional issues that we have to bring. I know in our district we're moving forward with a big initiative. We haven't necessarily rolled it out, but we're calling it Get Fit and Feel Fabulous, because we know how you feel impacts how you perform. When an athlete feels that they're at the top of their game and they feel good in their uniform, I guarantee you, you're going to get a certain edge from them that you wouldn't from somebody that doesn't have that edge of confidence. And then obviously to the shortages. Raise your hand if you're in an organization, a school, or a business, or a setting where there are shortages of staff. Exactly. To be honest, I don't think it's going to get any better for a while. I know when I talk to other districts around the country, we're all facing a shortage. And so is every business, everywhere you go. I mean, I read the other day, Walmart's paying drivers $100,000 to drive trucks for Walmart. And so I think of the last 2 years, I personally, leading health services is one area of my job, managing and establishing COVID reporting for 53,000 students, 9,006 employees. I'm happy to say, because of the work in the district, the Douglas County Health Department mentioned we have one of the most robust and time-sensitive and detailed COVID reporting systems, probably just like many of you. But if you weren't resilient and you're in this room or you're listening, you've developed a lot of resiliency over the last 2 years. I kind of look back at the last 2 years, and I was sharing this with our staff in student and community services. I felt like we were climbing a brick or a cement wall or a mountain in a mask with no direction and out there on an island of despair, because there was no manual to tell us as a leader of an education system how to navigate through that. And we know we all felt that around the country and around the world. And so when I think of resiliency, I like to think I'm the poster child for resiliency, and I'll talk about that later, but I want to talk about the importance of being able to withstand or recover quickly from something. Well, we couldn't withstand and recover quickly from the pandemic because every time you turn on CNN or listen to a public health expert, and it depended what channel you were listening to, things were always different. And then navigating and leading people. I also think of resiliency as being able to just spring forward and lead people. And then no matter what happens to you, as the famous rapper Tupac Shakur said, no matter how hard it gets, stand up, dust yourself off, keep your head up, and keep moving. That's what I call resilient, whatever comes at you. And the fact that you are still in education and participating today or wanting to learn something, you are resilient. I want to thank you for pushing through. I want to thank you for being the person that people can count on, whether it was someone in your own family, in your community, in your church, people, your side by side, your colleagues, and most importantly, the young people that we serve in the field of education. And we have to acknowledge, when I think of leadership, if we don't, as system leaders, take the opportunity to address and acknowledge what we've been through, we're never going to move forward to get to where we need to go. And things have changed. We cannot operate the way that we did pre-pandemic now. And we have to give people a forum to talk about everything that has changed, everything that we've been through, and how can we be future forward. Because we can't keep saying it's because of the pandemic. Our kids aren't learning because of the pandemic. I can't teach the way I used to because of the pandemic. Everything in education has changed, from the people that we hire, and how we educate students moving forward to plan for success. I call that purpose-driven leadership. Now, I believe now this is just Lisa Utterback talking. I know that you can take the Gallup Strength Finders, you can, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, but I believe that the most important attributes of a leader are as follows. Communicator, motivator, you have to be positive. And when I say positive, I don't mean rainbow bright, everything's hunky-dory. I mean that you have hope and positivity that what you're doing is worth the juice. I call it, is the juice worth the squeeze? Hope is not a strategy. I know we were just talking in the hospitality room. We know that hope is not a strategy, but without it, what do you have? Your hope is your purpose, your why. What is it that you do? Before I came to education, because OPS, there was a hiring freeze when I applied out of my undergraduate, I was in corporate America. And I learned a lot about navigating a pretty affluent business. But I wasn't hopeful. I didn't wake up and I wasn't full of life because I wasn't making a difference. My why wasn't being fulfilled. And positive people are hopeful. And it's infectious. So is negativity. Negativity is incredibly magnetic. And I hear so many people, and I have to correct them, don't want to hear that it's because of the pandemic. Don't want to hear that it's the pandemic. It's what are we going to do as a result of to be future forward? Because we have 53,000 students, hundreds of thousands of families, and generations to come counting on how we respond. I think of integrity. Mean what you say and say what you mean. Mean what you say and say what you mean, because if you don't, there's going to be someone behind you, because you always have those naysayers. There's always 3 to 5% of people in every business, in every neighborhood, in every organization, on every sports team that think that they should coach better than the head coach. They think that they can teach the kids better, and they know all the answers from the sidelines. And then, so your integrity comes into play, and I think, obviously, IQ is very important, but EQ is what has served me well. Being able to read what people are thinking, their body language, and understanding how to approach people when they're in those moments and move them in a direction where they can be successful. I also say a team builder. I think some of the most successful, I was just talking to the new president, Dr. Hughes, and I could just tell, and I say this respectfully, I didn't know what he looked like, but when he came into the room, I felt like I was speaking with the young Tom Osborne. You could feel the energy and the passion for what he was getting ready to do. I feel that coaches from my own experience, make some of the best leaders because they know how to build a team, or athletes in general. Now, my son was an athlete, but he was more academically gifted, and he excelled in technology. But being able to build a team and capitalize on people's strengths and move them into action. I also will say coaching. Coaching doesn't mean you tell people what they want to hear. The most effective coaches that I have had in my life stuck their foot so far up the backside of my head to tell me what I needed to hear. So many people in leadership, in higher education, or in our roles, I have people all the time tell me what I want to hear. I don't need that. I need people telling me what I need to hear. And when you build a successful team, you have people on your team that can close the door and tell you what you need to hear and prepare you for what's coming. Just like an effective athletic coach or a debate coach or a JROTC coach, they know how to manage up and tell you what you need to hear. And then obviously you have to be focused. The bottom line is, if you're in this room or you're listening, you're in the seat. You're in the seat. And you should have the passion, the purpose, and the mindset to help lead as the CEO of a classroom. I'll tell you, when I was in room 10 at Walnut Hill Elementary School for 7 years teaching 5th grade, I was the CEO and president of 25 to 26 to 27 5th graders every year. And the interesting thing is I know I made an impact, because the same attributes that I shared up here are the same attributes that when they come and visit me, 15, 20 years later, they're talking about how I had an impact on their life. And my passion and purpose and mindset in education hasn't changed. Of course, I built my strategic leadership skills through Dr. Jed Johnston and Dr. Doug Christensen and others that were in the class. But my core values as a human being have never changed. And that's integrity, because the eyes of the world are always watching us in education. And so today I want to just focus on leadership in managing transitions. I am very fond of William Bridges, who wrote a book called Managing Transitions. If you haven't read it, I would highly suggest that you do, because we are in a major transition in I'll say, public or private education. We started out where we were, there are 3 phases of transition. First of all, it's ending and letting go. And this book and this diagram is so applicable to everything we do, whether you lose a parent. I think I just lost my mother, who was 68 years old, 2 weeks before my wedding, unexpectedly. She passed away. And I was shell-shocked. But I realized from my training that I was going to go through some phases. Now, there are 3 phases of a transition, so I want to pivot to where we're at in education. Raise your hand, or I'm going to have you just stand for a second. Stand if the people that you work with or yourself experienced tremendous loss in the way you did things pre-pandemic to the way you're doing them now. Can you just stand up? I appreciate that, your honesty. The way you do things today, if you're doing them the way you did it pre-pandemic, you can sit down. It's always good to move. That's that coach in me. But we didn't have an opportunity to process the ending of our school year in March of 2020. We were all sent home. None of us in this country knew what we were going to do in April, May, and June. We were planning. And then in Douglas County, where all of our kids reside, the COVID rates were astronomically high. The vaccine hadn't been rolled out, and there were lots of things that we were dealing with. But the 3 phases of transition really talk about your ending, and that is whatever it is that you're doing, it comes to an end, whether it's planned or whether it happens or you're voluntold. Then after that happens, people are very confused, they're frustrated, they're in denial, they're longing for what things used to be, and then you go in something called, they call that the transitional, I call it the neutral zone, where you're kind of like just going through the motions. And this could be, again, applicable to anything you do, a marriage, a divorce, a death, moving from one part of the house to another, you're kind of in the neutral zone. And that's where things are uncertain. You're just kind of listening, you're taking copious notes, and you're just reacting in the way that you did before letting go. And then as you come out of that, and that's the most pivotal time where an effective leader, because there are leaders, when you have a position or a title, you are a leader. The title gives you the ability to lead. It's how you lead and what you do as a leader that has the profound effect as the CEO and president of everything that you do. But that's the time, and I believe we're kind of in there right now, and some of us leading urban districts, or some of you, I say respectfully, have probably already transitioned out, but you're in the new beginning. And in the new beginning is where you get to plan and you get to be innovative, but the whole goal is getting to an accomplishment of high energy and excitement in starting to go in a different path. That's kind of what I call our North Star. The interesting thing about all this research is there's no timeline for how people go through it. There are people that I have known that have lost a parent or a guardian or a child or a loved one that they have not figured out how to get out of ending and letting go. You cannot move here if you're still stuck here. And I was just having a conversation with a good friend of mine who is a teacher in the Omaha Public Schools, and she's always talking about and complaining about the pandemic. Well, the pandemic did this and the pandemic did that. And I said, when are you going to stop that? You are still stuck in what was done to you because of a pandemic, that you haven't embraced the opportunities to move forward. And so we have to talk about it. We have to put people in a room. We have to give them an opportunity to talk about it, because it has had a tremendous, we have people that have lost individuals that they loved because of the pandemic. We have people that financially, it became, maybe not, I know in the Omaha Public Schools and in most school systems, staff were paid, but we had lots of people that lost their jobs, that struggled tremendously. And if we don't talk about it, we can't address it, and you can never move forward from it. And that's kind of the neutral zone. So I challenge you, if you are in leadership, to get the book, Managing Transitions. I do some talks on that with individuals around the state. But it's been life transforming for me as I've gone through some life changes, because it puts where I was or where I needed to be on paper. Because here's the thing. It's not the changes, remember this, it's not the changes that do people in. We change things all the time. People get married, we move, we get jobs, we have children, we may have grandchildren, we lose loved ones. Those changes have happened since the beginning of time. It's the transition, and transitions are psychological. It's the psychological transition that we have to make that does us in. And in transitions is a lot of emotion, a lot of grieving, a lot of anger, a lot of sorrow, a lot of happiness sometimes. And so remember, changes are situational. It's the transitions in our mind of letting go of what we used to have or the way things used to be, or letting go of someone that does us in. And you know, I remind myself of that often throughout the day when I think of my mother, of letting go and processing my emotions and being okay with that. And then obviously I say having grace on people, because they're counting on you to help them move through that. When I think about leadership, your leadership matters most. There are really three things that a leader needs to be able to know and do and understand, and it starts with your beliefs. Your beliefs. When I think of the pandemic, if you do not believe that things can get better and maybe be more innovative, more strategic, and different, I mean, I think of remote learning, the opportunities that students had, especially some students that really needed it. Now, I will tell you, as someone that saw that the opposite side is, in many cases, our kids need to be in classrooms and have those connectedness with their teachers every day in environments where they're stimulated by individuals that love them. There's collective accountability, and there's people that care, and there's those wraparound supports. But if you do not believe that things can get better, if you do not believe that what you are doing is making a substantial difference on the lives of young people and generations, you really need to go back and figure out what your why and purpose is. Now, I personally believe that people that go into the field of education are special. There's something about us that has the innate ability to want to inspire and make a difference in the lives of people. That's why we went to school to do it. I feel that individuals that work in schools are classified staff. They enjoy what they do. I know when I was a principal, our engineer one year got Engineer of the Year. Our security officer got Security Officer of the Year because they understood what their why was. And I like to believe that I was a little part of that because every morning I embodied why we were there making a difference for kids. And your beliefs impact your attitude. You cannot make a difference or move forward in a positive way with a negative mind. It just is not psychologically possible. And I've talked to individuals that, things aren't going well. I really don't feel like this is going to go good. And you kind of begin to have those courageous conversations, and it starts to pivot from sulking and poor me to, you know what, I do feel better about myself. And so remember, your beliefs impact your attitude. Remember, you're the CEO. If you're a classroom teacher, your beliefs and the kids that are sitting in front of you, and your beliefs and how you can impact what they do. If you are a principal of a school, your beliefs in what you do every day in arriving and opening the building impacts the beliefs, the actions, and the attitude of those that you serve. And so I always say your beliefs impact your attitude impacts your actions, and your actions inspire change. You are in the seat, you are in a position to make a profound difference in the lives of those that you're responsible for, regardless of what your position is. Passion, purpose, and mindset. I could not imagine when I had a corporate job for a short time. I just could not imagine getting up and going to a job every day that I didn't like. Life is too short, and you know the math. I used to tell my students when I was a 5th grade teacher at the beginning of every year, we are a family. What? I'm not, the kids. No way, I'm not. I said, well, let's think about it. The average teacher, I'll start with the teacher, and I'll do administrator. The average teacher spends, in an elementary school, 7 hours a day interacting with the students that are in front of them, because you take out lunch or you take out a special. That individual probably interacts 3 to 4 hours a week with those individuals that they're in the same grade level with. The average, and you take that 7 times 5 is 35 hours a week. I can tell you as a mother of a 23-year-old, he reminds me often, I never interacted with him 35 hours a week. Because my hours when I came home, it was about 6 o'clock, worked out, he had sports. You think about an administrator or a superintendent. You times that about 10, at least on the job, boots on the ground, 10 hours. 10 times 5 is 50 hours. Then you average the time you're spending emails, on phone calls, now Zoom calls, Teams, everything you can do it. I was driving down here on a Teams call. Yay, I thought this is kind of cool. Couldn't have done this a few years ago, right? And I could actually see people. But you think about, when you talk about mindset, think about the hours. Raise your hand, who has a child? May I ask, how old is one of your children? 12. Okay, what do you currently do? Okay, so when you work, how many hours do you work a week? 50 hours a week. Do you spend 50 hours talking with your 12-year-old? No. We don't. But we do with the people that we work with. You do. You spend 50 to 30 to 45 hours a week Now I'm going to tell you, if I had to spend 40 hours a week talking with my significant other, I couldn't do it. I'm just being honest. I just could not do it. But we do it with the people that we work with every single day. The kids that were in front of us in our classrooms, whether it's 7 hours, if you're a high school person, 4 or 5 or 7 hours, I still do not spend 7 hours talking to anybody else in my life than I did the people that I work with, the people that are on the team that I serve. So if you don't have the passion and you're not excited and you don't believe in what you're doing, how does that impact what you do? It's common psychology. You have to love what you do, and you have to love who you do it with, and most importantly, who you do it for. We have so many young people that are growing up with the adversity that I talked about. We are their best opportunity to break cycles. We are their only hope. Again, hope is not a strategy, but hope is something that we know if I get up every day and I go through the motions and put in the effort, that I will have the opportunity to have something better. From Scottsbluff, Nebraska to Crete to Omaha, we all serve children. We all serve families. Their challenges may look a little different, whether you're affluent or you're living in poverty and public housing. Every single person has struggles. Some people have more money to cover them up or to get help. But these kids are counting on us. And when the world has gone in a different direction and things abruptly changed, the pandemic, they weren't given answers just like we weren't. But they're counting on us and showing up every day for us to have beliefs that what we do is going to make a difference, that our attitude and how we interact. When I speak with principals and other people around the district, I talk about behavior. No kid in America comes in and wakes up and says, I'm going to go into school today and I'm going to cuss that teacher out, I'm going to rip that new bulletin board down, and I'm going to give her an earful. There is no kid in America, I would challenge you, that wakes up and says they're going to go in there and cuss their teacher out. It just doesn't happen. What happens is the circumstances that are beyond our control in our environments impact anger, and we know that behavior comes out in some of our most safest environments. Our schools, our work environments, because those are the people that we feel safe with, and it's our most stable routines. And so how we look at those young people and we understand that there are things that we may not know about. And I will tell you this, there are young people that every day in student and community services in the Omaha Public Schools, every single day, there are families coming up that are from other countries through war, through opportunities, a migrant and our refugees. Every single day in student and community services, there are families coming in that are homeless, and they're usually with their children. Every single day, there are families that are coming in and their parents that feel that things weren't right or their kids weren't treated fairly. Not that they weren't treated fairly, but because of their own experiences that they had with the system, that they felt jaded, or a teacher. Just the other day, a parent came in and I heard him yelling out there, and I thought, ooh, I love getting out there, and because those are my favorite kind. You know why? Because they just need someone to communicate. And there was this parent that was really upset, saying, I know that this teacher discriminated against my child, this, and that. And I said, you know what, tell me more about that. And the first thing she said, because I had a teacher that did it to me. And we often know when we have been jaded or treated unfairly, everything else that happens, we automatically interject our experiences. And it happens with staff too. And so I just say, without passion for what you're doing, without understanding your purpose, it does affect your mindset. And I just could not get up and do a job that I didn't enjoy what I do. It doesn't mean I have to enjoy everything. I'm going to tell you, the pandemic about threw me in. I just wanted to cry. The director of health services that we had just hired, she was new. Luckily, she had a lot of those leadership qualities that I could help foster. And she had that work ethic, and she understood the importance. I mean, there were days we were crying like, how can we get through this? Because it was safe and we had grace on each other, but we always focused on it was important to get our kids back to school, keep them in school, but yet keep them safe. All right, and so I know that your beliefs, your attitudes, and your actions have a profound, and I use that word because there's no other word to say it, a critical impact on the culture and climate. You can walk into a school, by the way that the security guard greets you or the secretary, you can tell what kind of school you're going to have. I used to tell our secretaries, and now we train secretaries throughout the system. The first representatives of the school system are the bus drivers. They are the first contact that most of our kids have if you ride a bus, or your secretary or your security officer when kids enter to the school. And I used to, when I first became a principal, I remember that secretary was no longer with us after a period of time, but when kids would come in late, "You're late! Oh my gosh, you're late again! You better learn how to get up and come to school." And we changed that. Our verbiage in that school and all across the district, because we train our secretaries. Professional development is critical. You know what? I'm really glad to see you. I'm sorry you're late today, but I'm glad you're here. Did you eat breakfast? No, let me get you something. Greeting kids. Or when a security officer or a PAC facilitator has to go to a room and get a young person that's at a high level. Understanding, are you having a hard day? Anytime I visit a school and I see kids waiting, I know. I'll say, "Man, are you having a hard day?" I can tell you are. And you empathize and you help them problem solve and identify issues and get them back as quick as they can to the classrooms. And guess what? I have found I do that more with staff than I did students. They need that. People need to feel needed. Every single person needs a cheerleader. Dr. Annie McFarland, who's our executive director, I make sure that I constantly do check-ins. I meet one-on-one each week with all the supervisors in student and community services. And I always make sure that I want to be correct when I say this. You never give false praise. Never give false praise to somebody, because then you just become a hill of beans and you blow hot air. But you develop relationships with people, and if they understand who you are as a person in your core, whether it's the students that you're leading in room 10, or it's a school that you're leading on 28th Avenue and Ellison Street, or if you're housed in a district leading an entire system, it's what you say, what you stand for, people will know. And when you have those relationships with people, you can tell them what they need to hear, and you can spotlight success, and you can help them through positive coaching to get them to understand my behavior has to change, because if we don't acknowledge it, you're just perpetuating the situation. You go into a school, and the person that has the most unacceptable behavior, if it's the custodian getting angry, if it's the secretary scolding a student because they're late again, let me tell you something. We have kids that are living in environments that most of us in this room couldn't fathom. Guaranteed. And so 8 hours a day, that 40 hours a week, you take that times an administrator, I probably work an average of 60 hours on the job. And I give praise and glory, and I'll say this, I lift her up in prayer every day and every week. Dr. Cheryl Logan and other superintendents, the responsibilities, the higher you go, the more responsibilities you have, but the hours that you put in increase. And when you're over here, something else suffers over here. And so finding that balance, and I always remember this from Dr. Christensen, I say this all the time, is having balance and being present doesn't mean 50% of the time I'm going to be over here and 50%. It means that when you're in the moment, when I'm talking with my son, I'm not on my phone doing emails. And you know, I did a lot of that when I was at his high school games. He didn't know. But we talk about that now, and I tell him someday when I get that little Kavan, that grandkid, I'm going to go back and redo it all. I was always there physically, but I have to admit I wasn't always there mentally. Hey, yeah, I heard his name. Emails, hang on, taking the phone calls. And so how you model that too makes a big difference. But remember, you are the CEO and president of a classroom as a teacher. You are the CEO and president if you are the custodian of a school, because you have the ability to make that school look better than it ever did. You have the ability to make that school look like a place where people have pride and respect, from the way that the lawn is to the landscaping to treating the weeds. And I will tell you, when I was a principal, and I think you can still go there now, because we fostered a culture of collective efficacy where everybody took pride in the school. And I'll tell you a story about that, about culture and climate. I'm a little OCD when it comes to organization. Like when I was a classroom teacher, we had cleaning duties. Every day we'd clean our desks. How much time do I have? 5 minutes. Okay, I won't. But it's empowering people through your actions. Your actions are really what people will remember. People will remember what they've seen you done, more importantly than what they've heard you say. And so how you go around and you foster that culture and climate is incredible. And remember, you have a profound impact on everyone. Your coworkers next to you, teaching next to you. Go into a staff lounge someday and listen to the talk. Go to a principal's meeting and stand out in the parking lot after the principal's meeting. You'll hear the talk. Go and talk with parents and guardians in a community meeting when there's a change or something happening. And then obviously the community, what is the word on the street in the community? The culture and climate impacts everything about a district, a school, or a classroom. Again, I'll start to wrap it up here, but it's common sense. A negative mindset will never give you a positive outcome. I can't imagine a quarterback for the University of Nebraska-Lincoln stating, you know what, guys, it's 4th and 1. We know we're going to get stopped at the goal line. Let's go. It's just not possible. I don't think that Michael Jordan would have said, give me the basketball, I know I'm going to miss the shot. It's just not possible. I don't think a kid that thinks they're going to fail a test is going to go in and pass the test. And I don't think that a teacher that doesn't believe that they make a difference can make a difference. I don't think that an administrator can lead a school to success and improved outcomes if they don't believe that they can do it. And I know from watching Dr. Cheryl Logan, she believes wholeheartedly in what she does. If she didn't, I wouldn't be working with her. Because I, as Lisa Utterback, understand that I have to believe in my leaders. I have to believe in who I'm serving and who I'm serving with, or it's not going to work. 2 things I want to say is what's next. So now what? Well, make sure as we come out of this school year, you take time to unplug, uninterrupted time, you be present in the things that you love to do. I made a life switch. When I'm walking my dogs, I no longer take work calls from 6 to 8 at night, and it has helped me unplug. Make sure that you take time to reflect on what we've been through. This pandemic has been like nothing else. Mentally, emotionally, and physically, and socially, it has impacted everything that we do. Make sure you identify that and you reflect, you set some goals, and you refocus on how you want to be better, because you've got students and staff and families and a community and a generation of young people that have been shaken that are counting on you. Know your why, your purpose. These are the things that keep you grounded in what you do. And then foster collective efficacy, whether it's your grade level team, whether it's your building of school leaders, or whether it's your network of leadership at the district level. And I would say letting go, repattering, understanding how you can become better, because you will never be successful operating the way you did pre-pandemic than you are now. We have learned things about teaching and learning with computers and technology that we didn't have, I'll say, in our district before. And so understanding how can we repattern and be better and to serve each other and kids, and then create that new beginning. It's a great time to do it. It's a great time as we're ending this year. I don't say do it at the end of the year because people are burned out. I already told our leaders, when are we getting together? When are we going to start planning? In July. Well, I need a vacation. You do? Don't you? Yeah, I just didn't want to tell you. It's okay. We've been through a lot. But you know what? We made it. And we're going to get better. And we're going to operate differently because that's what we do as leaders. I want to end by saying, as a leader and I remind myself of this every day, as a leader, as a human being, on your worst day, you are somebody's best hope. When we do it right, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I believe I am resilient. I believe I'm passionate and I'm hopeful, and I'm going to end by telling you why. I was born to a teenage mother. Yes, it's a little emotional talking about it now, but she was 17 when she had me. My birth certificate still says father unknown. I've never met or have no idea who my father is. We grew up on welfare and food stamps. I was the kid that was savvy in 3rd and 4th grade when they had remember the weekly readers? You could order the Scholastic books. I would take $3 bills of food stamps. Now you have the EBT card. But I would drive down to Quick Shop, cash it in, and get a 3-cent an hour later and get 97 cents twice. And I could buy 3 99-cent books and then get the free poster that was at the top. I was that kid. But to be honest, I went to 11 different schools in the Omaha Public School because of eviction. I now lead a division that manages the records. And a few months ago, when we were looking at records, I asked them to pull up my records. And a lady in the office came over, and she was a little shaken, and she said, "Ooh, I didn't know you went to 11 different schools." I said, "Yeah." I said, and I told her a little bit about myself. My student ID number in the Omaha Public Schools is a special education student. I was illiterate going into 4th grade until Miss Johnson created a place for me where I began to understand I had more of a purpose than what I was going home to. My mother, God rest her soul, spent multiple times in the York Penitentiary for drug addiction. She passed as a meth addict. It wasn't meth that took her life, but it was the years of trauma. So I'm in that transition and getting to where I'm going to be okay with it. But I will tell you that we grew up in public, and once we got into public housing, we got stability. And I believe in my story, and my why has never changed. It just got stronger and better as I became more educated and had opportunities to address the adversity that was in front of me because of people that are listening or people are in this room. And so I just want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your commitment to not giving up and to always know that when you feel like it, you can Google me, you can reach out to me, but you can talk to the people that are next to you that should be lifters and inspire you to come back the next day. Thank you. How'd you say? Yep. Be strong, remain focused, have hope. It's not a strategy, but it's something that empowers you to keep going and never forget your purpose.
Lisa, thank you. Those of you that like to speak, we'll join you out in the lobby. Good afternoon again. For those of you that are returning, thanks for coming back for the second session. For those of you that just stepped in, welcome to our Leadership Symposium from Doane University, where we have the chance to showcase some of our leaders that are products of our institution. And we'd like to believe that we are an institution that builds leaders, and we have some examples to share with you. Dr. Steve Joel became the superintendent of Lincoln Schools in 2010, following superintendents in other cities in Nebraska. And I had the chance to be the commissioner during the time that he arrived in Nebraska at Beatrice, and nobody thought he would go to Beatrice and be able to do anything. Beatrice hadn't made a move of any kind of improvement change in 150 years, and nobody thought Steve Joel was able to do that. Well, very soon they constructed a new central office as a resource center, boardroom, and a bunch of other things, and then built a new high school, which was, I thought, amazing. Then he heads to Grand Island, which again, everybody said, what in the world is he going there for? They've ground up 2 really good superintendents in the past 15 years, and he'll never survive. Well, I had sat in the old administrative offices in December with my top coat on because it was so cold in there. It was just a dump.
It was a dump.
Steve got a new building built, and he also energized the career and technical education program and many other things in the Grand Island schools. And then now at Lincoln, I think his leadership during the pandemic has been incredible. I don't know how you could question it. Somebody may do something different than he did, but I can't honestly say that it would have been better. The thing that I liked the best was in Grand Island when the immigration services came to pick up the kids out of the schools and take them back. He said, no, you are not taking our kids. And when the pandemic came to make decisions about having school, not having school, who was doing what, I'm sure he questioned whether he was right or not, but when he made a decision, he was adamant that that was the thing that we were going to do. And he, just like Lisa Utterback talked about a little bit, he had a reason for it, he had a purpose for it, and he was hopeful in terms of its outcome. So basically, other than the fact that he has degrees from Kansas State University, which at this point I've forgiven him for, he came to Doane way back right after the Civil War to play football, I think, and once in a while he'll get to talking and his Jersey accent will come out. Well, anyway, he's a Doane graduate, one of our own, and I'd like to have you help me welcome Steve Joel to the podium. Steve?
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Doug. You know, when they told me you were going to introduce me, I said, please, there's got to be somebody else. But that you handled that well. Jason, good to see you, right? Jason Suter right there? No? Sorry, wrong person. I thought maybe I recognized somebody. It's a real pleasure to be with you today. I was telling Quinn before I was getting ready to come on that I always come to Crete a little bit early because it's fun to drive around and have all those memory flashbacks of 4 glorious years before you have to accept responsibility, get a job, and let life hit you. I'm getting ready to retire. I'm 2 months away, and right now I'm having a great time on a farewell tour and just having opportunities to talk to students and to staff and to community members, because I truly believe that education is the greatest profession. But I want you to know something. I didn't come into education naturally. In fact, I was somebody whose journey would not have predicted that I would be standing on a stage today during inauguration weekend talking to either existing leaders or future leaders. I grew up in New York. My father was a New York City policeman. He did that for 35 years, World War II veteran, never, ever, ever, ever took the sergeant's test because he hated any officer in the police department because they didn't understand where the real work was taking place. Now, my dad died in 1981, and I don't think he'd be real appreciative of the fact that I became a superintendent of schools, but the reality of it is, whether he knew it or not, he was the one who motivated me to do that. You see, neither my mother or my father had a high school diploma, and in order to be a role model for me, they went and got their GEDs because they wanted me to graduate high school and go to college. Now, what I didn't count on was the next phase of my journey, which, by the way, I'm all about journeys. Whenever I meet somebody for the first time, I want to know your journey. How did you get where you are? Who are the people that tapped you on the shoulder and said, I see something in you that you don't see in yourself? How many have somebody in their life like that? That's how it works, right? And as we begin to matriculate through our lives, that's the give back that we have to do. Josh McDowell is over here. I met Josh McDowell on the track. My daughter and he were in the same class at Doane, and I was at a race. I forget what it was. It was Iowa someplace. You were running either the 4x1 or the 4x8 or the 4x10,000, whatever race. It didn't matter. And I saw this kid out there that, pardon me, wasn't a natural athlete, but oh my God, did he put forward effort. And when the race was over, I went over to my daughter. I was a superintendent at Grand Island at the time. I said, introduce me to that young man. He said, Dad, he's a teacher, and we got him hired. And he came in, I brought him to my office, and I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? He says, I want to take your job in 3 years. And I thought, what a bright future. And look where he is today, superintendent of Crete, Nebraska. I'm not taking all the credit for that, because we didn't hire him right away. He had to work his way back into to Grand Island. But I can tell you, as I look back over 37 years as superintendent, there have been a boatload of meetings with people that I've had. And I always tell myself this, that conversation could very well lead to something exciting for the person who I just spoke with. And I want you to keep that in mind as you continue to do your work. That words matter, actions matter, follow-up matters, because we are in the greatest profession. We get to do this every single day with people. But see, my father disappointed me, because in 1972, when I graduated MacArthur High School, I had a football scholarship to a place called Nassau Community College, the University of Nebraska in Long Island, New York, very successful football team. If you were any good, you got a scholarship there. When you got the scholarship, your parents bought you a car. I had a 1965 Mustang. Myself and 3 other of my friends were going to the community college. My life was set. And my father was like really disappointed in me. And here's why he was disappointed. Because he'd never been west of New Jersey in his life, or back in New York, New Jersey. And what he said to me was, look at Pennsylvania. He'd never been there. Look at upstate New York. He'd never been there. And then I got a letter from a school in North Carolina, and he'd never been there. And I turned them all down. And the first week in August of 1972, true story, I can't make this up, he comes to the backyard. I'm with the guys that I'm going to community college with. And he says, hey, you dummy, phone call. And I said, who is it, Dad? He said, somebody from Dope College. And I thought it was an uncle, a cousin, one of my friends. I get on the phone. It's a true story. Some of the Doane people still get mad at me when I tell that story. And I get on the phone, and it was a football coach at Doane College who knew my high school coach. And he basically said, I understand you might be open to going to school outside of New York. And I said, who told you that? And he said, your coach did. And he said, we have a scholarship for you if you want to come. And the bad news is you have to be here next week. And I said, no, I don't think I'm interested. And my father was on the other line. He said, we'll talk about it. A week and a half later, they dropped me off at midnight in Crete, Nebraska. Now, you want to talk about culture shock. I hated my parents for it. Today, you can turn them into HHS. That's child brutality. They dropped me off. We had no cell phones. We had no money. I hated Nebraska. There was nothing to do. And then the seniors took me snipe hunting, and that brought me closer to the Nebraska culture. So that's my journey. That's my story. 4 years later, who knows what snipe hunting is? Bill, you know what it is. I think you might have taken me. You all know what snipe hunting is. So they took unsuspecting New Yorkers. They dropped us off in the middle of nowhere. And we didn't get back to campus till the sun came up. And then, of course, the guy I was with, Bob Zelazny from Paterson, New Jersey, kept telling me about mountain lions that he read about out there. And we were lucky to be alive. But anyway, here I am, lots of years later, still in Nebraska. So at the end of my college, when I graduated as an education major, and I want to thank, most of them are passed, but Dick Dudley, I know, is still around and still influencing people. Those are the people who saw things in me that I didn't see in myself. That's how I became an education major, and that's how I realized that I was going to embark on this career that I mean, nobody in my family did it. I didn't know if I was going to be any good at it, but I thought, you know, maybe with the coach and the help of some people, I'd have a shot at it. And so when I graduated, I took a job in Wilbur, Nebraska. I don't know if anybody knows where Wilbur is. It's pretty close to here, yep. And I almost got fired on the first day because I couldn't pronounce the Czechoslovakian names. And the principal literally had to have an extra help session with me. And I used to say to him, I took phonics. How do you get Zajcek out of Z-A-J-I-C-E-K? To me, that's Zajacek. Well, he said, the mothers and the fathers are all upset at you. You better learn these names. So I literally had to learn. I can speak Czechoslovakian today. So anyway, I called my dad, and I said to my father, he said to me, okay, you graduated. He came out for graduation. And, of course, he had to have his gun on his side because he's a New York cop, and he's trying to impress people. And at the end of graduation, I said, Dad, he says to me, you got to hurry back because I need you on the softball team and then the bowling team in the winter, which is what cops do with you know, their athletic time. And I said, Dad, look, I want to teach. I got a teaching job at Wilbur. And I'll never forget what he said to me. He looked me in the eye and he said, what the hell do you want to do that for? And I said, because I could be a sergeant in the NYPD and never take the sergeant's test because all you needed was a BA, and I had one. Well, I taught, and the rest is my career. So I just want you to know this. We all come about who we are today, tomorrow, 10 years from now, by how our journey gets defined and how willing we are along those steps of the journey to put ourselves out there and take chances. Because we don't know what we're capable of unless we go and we give it a try. And I am so thankful for the people in my life that have said to me, you can do this, because I wouldn't have done it otherwise. And so, what do we do in education? People say to me right now, we're looking at a national teacher shortage. Why? Headlines, compensation. I mean, good grief. You can come to Lincoln School Board meetings. Hopefully nobody watches them, but we have about 8, 10, 12 people who come every second and fourth Tuesday to extend our meeting, to tell us all the things wrong with public education. And honestly, Tuesday night, there were like 7 topics. So it's all about what topic is going to stick. Teachers, young people see that and they think, why do I want to be a teacher? Well, you want to be a teacher because you can change the world one person at a time. And there's no greater profession than education, because it's the profession that makes every single profession possible in this country. And I wish we could compensate more. I wish we could encourage people to get into it for the intrinsic reasons. But because the economy is the way it is today, there's a lot of opportunity out there. And I'm nervous that until we get into a recession, which I'm not wishing on anybody, but we all know one's coming, that education for young people today is a secondary consideration. And it needs to be primary. Because when we're done at the end of our careers, and I hear this from teachers all the time and administrators all the time that have done 30 years and 40 years, they look back and they say, it went fast, but I had the opportunity to make a difference. Well, we're seeing some major changes in education. I think Lisa was talking about some of the challenges, and probably some of the other speakers are too. I mean, these are the headlines. You know, one of the things that I will be the first to admit, Doug and I were talking behind stage, that this pandemic is not the reason I'm retiring, but this pandemic has taken its toll on me in ways that I never could have been prepared for. There was no class to take to be able to deal with the decisions that you have to make as an educator today, in your classroom, in your building, in your district, that people are going to look at and say, yes, that was a very good decision, thank you very much. And it's because of the divisiveness in America on so many planes and so many levels that caused us to make decisions, hoping that it was the right decision. But we better be agile and flexible if, in fact, we have to change that decision. Headlines, I've got them up there. I want to talk about just, personal struggles. One of the things that people seem to forget, and we try to remind teachers in Lincoln and administrators in Lincoln all the time, we're human beings. We have to have outlets. We have to deal with our own personal struggles before we can help kids with their personal struggles. And we preach that all the time. And one of the things that you're going to experience, if you haven't already, along your life journey, is you're going to get challenged by things you never saw coming. And you have to be ready for those challenges. I'm a big believer that the best growth that we ever participate in is when we're challenged the most. When something just crops up, I call them pivot points. Some of you probably have heard me talk about that. I'm actually working on a book that I've been working on for a while. I don't know that I'll ever finish it, but I'd like to. And it's about those things that hit us when we least expect them. When we don't see them coming, that it's not part of the grand master plan. But they come, and we have to meet them. We have to address them. Because we can't quit. We can't surrender. Because it gives us inner strength. And so, I don't wish these on you, but I'm just telling you, you will have them in your life. Because everybody does. And you have to be ready for them. So I wanted to just take a couple of minutes to just talk. Doug was talking about the immigration raid in Grand Island. And I'll get to a slide on that. But these are very, very stressful and painful times, personally and or professionally. This is a moment for leaders to stand up and represent what they believe to be true. I've had a couple of opportunities to do that in my life, and I'm most proud of that. When I can stand up and say, I had a conversation with a critic the other night. I want to follow people out to the parking lot now, right, and solve their little issue when nobody's looking. That's my New Yorker, but security never lets me do it, but they can't fire me, I don't think, and even if they did, I've only got 2 more months left. But here's what I was saying to this parent. He says to me, I've been to about 12 meetings, and you're not listening. And I said, oh yeah, I'm listening, but I have 42,000 kids I have to be responsible for. Not what you and your family or your social media group believe in. And he said, well, that's the problem with it, with liberal educrats, he called me. He said, you just don't listen to the conservative viewpoint. Oh, I listen to it. I got 42,000 kids that I have to represent. That's public education. Now, there are options for you. And of course, they all threaten to get charters. That's their big thing. They're going to get people elected. They're going to support charters. So it's an opportunity to stand up for what you believe in, and honestly, when you are able as a person, as a leader, to stand for something that you truly believe in, you find great strength and great confidence, and people around you see that, and it impacts them in a very, very positive way. Well, in 2006, I had just had a great workout. It was December. I was feeling perfect. The sun was shining. Anybody who's been stopped by a train in Grand Island before? Okay, hated them, right? So right by the district office, there's a train. I get a phone call from the police chief. He says to me, I can't give you details, but I want to give you a heads up. There's a big federal operation that's going to impact a whole bunch of kids and a whole bunch of people. The feds are here, and they're arresting first shift workers at the packing plant. I was never so grateful for the first train to go and then the next one to start immediately, because I had more time to think. Because by the end of the day, we had to contact 1,500 kids who didn't know where their parents were. And it was one of the darkest days of my professional career. But here's the beauty of that. The community rallied, the staff rallied, and at the end of the day, we had every student spoken for with a responsible adult. And the best story that I could tell, when the New York Times came out and did a front page article on us, and I wanted this in the article in a worst way, and it didn't get there. My next door neighbor owned a small business. And he used to always come over to me when he got his property tax statement. And by the way, he was a friend, and I mean a true friend, because we'd mow our yards together in the summer so that we could go have a beer on either one deck, right? So we got along well, but he hated paying property taxes, and he would come over to my house with his property tax statement, only when it went up, never when it went down, and he would say, how much of this money is going toward the illegals? And we'd have a debate about that, and we'd leave it there. On the day of the immigration raid, at 9 o'clock in the morning, when it was all over the national news, he comes up to my office. He hands me a $1,000 check. And I look at him and I go, Tim, of all the people, because this is about, in his mind, the illegals. He said, I'm a daddy too. And what they did to families is wrong. And we raised a whole boatload of money by noon that day in a community that was struggling to find their way with immigration. Human belief in people was something that I learned that day that was absolutely incredible for me. Well, you can see that's a picture of one of our mothers who was getting deported that day. And we knew who she was, and we immediately found her son. And by the way, when we went to Barr Middle School and to Walnut Middle School and Westridge Middle School and any of our schools to pull those kids out and tell them what happened, I deliberately put myself in a whole bunch of those meetings because I wanted to see the impact that the government was having on these kids and families. I learned a lot, but my confidence in humanity grew. Well, then I got to Lincoln, and first year Lincoln, honeymoon, having a great time. Memorial Day weekend, we were starting a strat plan. I got all my evaluations done. They're all on my desk. I'm going to take a 3-day weekend, and I'm a procrastinator. I knew because it was a long weekend, I was going to take all my papers, and I was going to take them home. And I try to work on them on, you got Friday, you got Saturday, Sunday, Monday off. But I knew myself well enough, there's no way I'm going to do any of it, so why go through the futility of that? I'll just pop up maybe Monday morning or Monday afternoon after the kids and grandkids leave. And I get the phone call late Sunday night that there's a little fire at the district office that grew into a big fire. And we lost everything by the next morning. The entire building was burned down. Now, for those of you that back up all of your stuff that you do, congratulations. Yeah. We didn't back up anything. And so think about payroll records, think about human resource records. All of that was lost. But again, spirit of human recovery. Because what we said at 2:30 in the morning is we're going to open up school on time. And when I said that, I had no idea if we could pull that off or not. But they did, we did, because people united around a cause because they knew the kids needed us. And so we opened up. If you come by 59050, you see a really nice building there now, which was paid for by insurance. I almost felt like we needed to thank the arsonist because we would never you could never put a superintendent's office in a bond issue and expect the bond issue to pass. And as Doug mentioned, if you would have when I walked into that building, from what I had in Grand Island as an office to what they were using in Lincoln Public Schools, it was like the major leagues to the 5th grade B team. And now it's an office that I think everybody's proud of. And then Purple Penguins, you can Google it. 2014, minding our own business. One of our middle schools, Irving Middle School, had a family that first time it had ever occurred in Lincoln. They had a child that was going through transgender. And we really 2014 didn't know what that was. And so the teachers held a training on their own, nothing that was district initiated. One of the teachers on the staff was offended by the content. Went to a parent of a very conservative church who was mortified at the content, who went to the conservative radio shock jock, who put it on the 5 o'clock news before I even knew it. And all of a sudden, all broke loose. And we found a board meeting that next Tuesday that had 100 people who were screaming and yelling about what's wrong with public education and what are we doing and why are we telling kids you don't have to decide if you're a boy or a girl. You can make that decision before you graduate. I mean, they had conjured up everything bad about LGBTQ, and we stood behind our mantra, all means all. And we lost teachers, we lost a few principals who couldn't bring themselves to educating kids that weren't consistent with their beliefs. And what we said was this: do the right thing then. But you don't have to change your beliefs, but you have to meet kids where they are. And that means gaining an understanding of LGBTQ and transgender. And we're a much better district as a result of that today. I like to think we are anyway. But first time in my life, I had to be walked out to my car. It's happened a few times since, but by security, literally by security to my car because people were waiting in the parking lot. And again, my New Yorker, all right. I mean, if they attacked me first, can I fight back? But they wouldn't let me. And I actually had a woman from Minnesota who stalked me and slept in the parking lot, changed clothes, and one time tried to get in saying she was a colleague of mine from a different place. And they ended up taking her to the interstate and following her, getting her out of the state. But there are people in our country that are absolutely committed to the things that we believe and are willing to stand up for. They're against that. And they see that as an infringement. And ladies and gentlemen, what's happened in other places in this world is what we cannot let happen in this country. We can't let dictatorial people with ideological beliefs that only matter to them and their group take over our schools. We have to fight that with every ounce of our energy. If I have one regret about retiring, it's that fight, Mark Fritsch, has to continue. You can't not continue that fight. And we can't ever surrender on that, because if we do, including in this state, we'll find ourselves looking way different than we do. Pandemic, I don't know. I mean, everybody's lived through the pandemic. Whose life didn't change during the pandemic? Yeah, all of our lives changed. It's been a tough time, but it's been a good time. We're hopefully through the worst of it, and we've become better, we've become stronger. Again, remember what I said earlier, is that the most important thing is to grow from those pivot points that challenge us the most. And so I don't want you running out here thinking that you're welcoming, please, Lord, let something really big and dramatic happen to me today. But what I am saying is, it's going to happen. And be prepared for what that might be, because you'll grow and the people around you will grow. So I talked about the pivot points. This right now is a very socially tense time. And in Lincoln, which I think is a very, very high-performing school district, we have great people, a great track record. Our board now is being told they're going to be challenged. We're going to make schools great again. That's kind of what they're saying, which we all know what that means. And the reality of it is, the good people of Lincoln, when we vote next May, are going to have to do the right thing again. And that is really weigh what people are saying about public schools and make the right selection for school board members. And thus far, the community of Lincoln has a very good track record of doing that. So some people, I get asked all the time, I mean, what does it mean to be influential, right? And I grew up very humbly. And I remembered something that one of my professors told me is always never forget your roots. Never forget what your family taught you. Never forget what it's like, what it means to be a servant leader, to give to others. And in college, the University of Nebraska, when I got my master's, one of my advisors said, always be kind to the people on your way up the ladder, because they're going to be the people that are going to catch you on the way down the ladder. And so one of the things that I've really tried to live my life by is just that. So when we interview principals, they won't let me interview anybody anymore because I'm not going to be around next year, but I normally would be involved in principal interviews, director interviews, and one of the questions I would always ask a candidate, for those of you that are thinking about becoming an administrator, is this: tell me the name of the person who cleans your workspace, and what do you know about their family? And you'd be surprised how many don't know. And to me, I know a bunch of people are looking, oh, who is that? What is his name? I gotta go find that out. The reality of it is, we can't ever let ourselves become bigger than the work that we're doing. We got a new superintendent coming into Lincoln. I'm very excited about Dr. Paul Gosman. And I had to pick him up today to take him around and meet some people. And he had to park on the far side of the parking lot, and he had to walk. And he said to me, he has a parking spot in Sioux City, and he said, didn't they give you a parking spot here? And I said, well, they tried, but I don't want a parking spot. I mean, I don't think I should be treated any more special than anybody else. So Mark, get rid of that parking spot that says principal only, 24/7. But it's, and he doesn't, I mean, I'm not saying that for any reason other than that's how I grew up, right? It's about the people that are carrying the water and the mail every single day in the organization that are the true heroes, but we have to be good role models for them. And so for me, if my secretary, executive assistant, has to walk a quarter of a mile from Whole Foods to get into the office, there's no reason why I can't do that either. So know when to arrive, One of the things that I tell superintendents all the time is make sure that it's a good fit for you, and make sure that the timing's good for your arrival. Those of you that are teachers or principals or college members of staff that have taken jobs, never take a job just because it's good pay or good location. Take a job because it fits your skills and because you know you can make a difference and be somewhat successful. So you have to know when to arrive. Surround yourself with winners. You know, back in when I first started out I've been a superintendent for 37 years. So when I first became a superintendent, I had to make a couple principal hires, coaching hires, whatever, staff hires. I was looking for people like me. Well, that's not smart. You know, if you think about Jim Collins' work, Good to Great, surround yourself with people that are smarter and better than you are, or at the very least, that can do the things that you are not very good at. If you were to see our team today in Lincoln, you would see a collection of people that are completely different, with completely different skill sets. And yet, as Dr. Gosman said, because he's had a chance to work with them all, we just are in sync. And we're in sync because we understand and appreciate what people do. I mean, I changed my PowerPoint 3 times. My secretary said to me, hey, Doane needs the PowerPoint. She said to me on Monday. You know when I gave it to her? 11 o'clock today, I was walking out the door. That drives her nuts, but that's how I work, right? I'm not thinking about it Monday. I'm thinking about 11 o'clock. And I said to Quinn, even before I got on, I want to change it again. And she said, oh, that's fine. I'm flexible. A lot of people aren't flexible. Know that casualties are inherent whenever you take on a new leadership position. That they're next to impossible. Not everybody's going to buy into a new leadership philosophy. I know that the person succeeding me is going to have this great team of folks and a great board and a great community, but there's going to be a period there where everybody's going to have to get to know him and he's going to have to get to know everybody else. And some may decide, well, maybe this doesn't line up with me philosophically. And that's just that's what leadership is. And then become transformational. So let me talk about transformational very, very quickly. And I want to say this. Who's been doing the same work for 7 years or more? All right, so I'm going to, for those of you that have been doing 7 years or more, you have figured out how not to become complacent. I believe that 7 years in a life of a leader is that year where you either reinvent or you find something new. Now here's why, and I'll just use the superintendency, and I talk to a lot of superintendents around the country. Year 1, honeymoon, look, listen, and learn. Year 2, develop a strategic plan. Year 3, start the implementation of the plan. Year 4, keep the plan going. It's a 5-year plan. Year 5, fine-tune the plan. Year 6, watch the plan start showing the results, particularly the 5-year student performance goals. Year 7, tweak it. Now what do? Either you do another 5-year strategic plan, or you find a way to reinvent yourself. You see, when I got to year 7 in Lincoln, when I was at year 7 in Grand Island, when I was at year 7 in Beatrice, I was having those pangs of complacency. I'm not a big change agent, by the way. When my wife wakes up early in the morning, and early for her would be 7:30, because I start my day at 5:30, if she interrupts me reading my papers and doing emails, it throws my entire day off. Because she wakes up wanting to talk. And I wake up in this quiet space that is just so lovely. I'm worried about retirement. She's worried about retirement too. So I'm a creature of routine. We're all creatures of routine. We like to do the same thing because we've perfected it. And it feels comfortable. And we don't have to put ourselves out there. But it leads to complacency. And it never hits you square in the nose to where you said, yep, I was complacent today. It happens over time, and then you lose your ability to be effective. And so it was Pat Rashevsky that actually taught me that a long time ago. You either reinvent yourself or you find something else to do. And so in year 7 in Lincoln, I was going to retire. A lot of people don't know that. I was going to retire. 7 years in Lincoln, that was a pretty good run. I was 62, 63. There were some other things I wanted to do. And I found myself getting complacent. My assistants who I all hired didn't need me anymore. I had to walk into their offices and say, would you try to ask me a question, please? Because they were all very, very accomplished professionals. And I was kind of going home at 5 o'clock, and I was filling a lot of my gaps and voids and at activities and events, which I really enjoy doing anyway. But I didn't feel like I was really connected anymore, like I was when I first came there. And then my phone rang, and a friend of mine called me up, and he said, I just had this most incredible experience. Green Bay, Wisconsin. Transformational leadership. Yeah, like the last thing in the world I need. Another leadership class, Doug, just by a different professor this time. And he said to me, no, seriously, this changed my life. And so I respected him. It's called Initiative 1 in Green Bay. You can Google it. And I took my associate superintendent and I said, if I got to do this, you got to do this with me, because you're going to have to keep my head in the game. I'm at that point in my career where I just don't feel like I need to do this. And I can tell you, from the minute I started that program to the minute I ended it, it transformed me. I learned more about myself and more about leadership in a year-long exploration of what is transformational and what does it mean than I ever thought I knew. And I came back to Lincoln with this sense of renewal. And I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Now I'm going to really work hard with leaders, and I'm going to help them become transformational. And so year 7, transformational leadership got me to year 12. And I'm just running out of time now. But the truth of the matter is, I want you to think about that. Because there's 870 superintendent vacancies this year in the country. It's most ever. And part of the reason for that is the headlines. The other part of the reason is they just don't have the belly and the fire to be successful and fight through the challenges that they have. And so I say that to you only because I want you to be thinking about you can't become complacent, ever. Doesn't mean you can't be a creature of routine. Okay, so what really is it? Well, you all read Sinek's book, right? So what is your why? I never really gave much thought to that. I didn't really have to. I was a superintendent of a big district. Nobody ever said to me, what's your why? But I had to reflect on it. And it made me really think about, why am I doing the work that I'm doing? Why have I stuck with it for as many years? What are those attitudes? Here, by the way, you cannot help people change unless you can change. Did you know that? Did you know that? You cannot help people change unless you have the ability to change. I mean, think about that. I've been a phony right up until the time I got into this. Because I could stand up in front of 320 administrators in Lincoln and say, you know what? We either change or we die. Any questions? And all somebody would have to say to me is, what do you mean by that? I didn't know what that meant. Because change is good. Who likes change? Raise your hand. Yeah, thank you. Well, 2, 3, maybe. See, I'd normally like to say you're a liar, right? Because, and I don't mean that personally, but people really don't wake up in the morning saying, change my world. But in education, when you think about the pandemic, think about the change that happened in those classrooms. And here I was promoting hybrid instruction, and I had no idea what hybrid instruction was until I went and substituted, and it almost killed me. And I said to myself, thank you, God, for not sending me back into the classroom full time. And then they said, well, you got to do it again. You really impress people. And so I did it again, and I gained this incredible appreciation for what teachers were going through in our classrooms. And we started making changes as a result, not only of my experience. I made every one of my administrators, LPSDO, we all had a substitute 2 days during the pandemic. It was a tough assignment. I didn't have to do it, but I can't expect people to change unless I'm willing to go out and experience a change too. Living Purposefully, one of the best books I've ever written, Purpose-Driven Life, or read. But to live purposefully takes a lot of work, a lot of dedication. You have to be grounded in belief systems, and those belief systems really have to be apparent to the people you're working with. And then, a lot of people don't want to hear this. You have to know when to leave. You have to know when to come, you have to know when to leave. We do wear out our welcomes. We all know people who hung on too long. I know so many superintendents, Doug does too, so many superintendents that stayed 1 year too long. 1 year too long. I was talking to a superintendent last weekend who called me up looking for just a couple of things to talk through, and he said, all I need is 2 more years. I'll be fully retired out of the state of Illinois. And I said, do you think you'll get to 2 years? I don't think I'll get it. Then I would leave now before it becomes a front page article about them wanting you out. That was a hard pill for that individual who, with a previous Board of Education, was somebody who was revered. Take an inventory of our lives. Paul Shellstraight just walked in. I don't know if anybody knows Paul Shellstraight, president of the Doane College Board. He was the offensive line coach when I was at Doane. And Coach, I'm telling you, you're making me nervous right now. But anyway, one of the things that he taught us was that we better be ready to play when it's time to play. And we can only do that if we've taken care of ourselves physically. And so transformation leadership really talks about, it's not just about, it's way more than the diet we go on every January 1st. Who's done that? Right. What is it, 97 or 98% of the New Year's resolutions diets are gone by January 15th? You know why? Because it's not purpose-driven. But transformational would say you have to make the commitment to do that. It's not only physical transformation, staying healthy, but it's also about intellectual transformation. It's about how we continue to be lifelong learners. Who likes learning new things? Who considers themselves technologically literate? Who relies on grandchildren to show them how to turn phones on? Thanks for being honest back there, gentlemen. Yeah, we do, right? I mean, it's a generational thing. I'll tell you, if there's something that I can't figure out is the millennial mindset. I'm trying to learn it. It's been difficult for me. And I think it's been difficult for a lot of people of our generation. How important is family? How spiritual are we? And then how interested in other people are we really? See, one of the things I learned through this study that I undertook was to lead with questions. So when I meet somebody for the first time, you know, they might think, well, you know, they might want to say, well, what's it like being superintendent of schools in Lincoln? I say, well, it's pretty good. You know, I'm really humbled and honored to be there. Tell me about your journey. What are you doing? I met 3 or 4 new people today just walking into Doane that I didn't know before, and I heard their journeys, and I know where they're from, and that's how we create legitimacy in conversations. But I'll tell you, there was a time where I always felt like I was so busy that when I was walking down a hallway on my way into somebody's classroom, somebody would stop me in a hallway, tell me something important, and I would not remember what that was. And now I have to stop and put myself into the moment. And I learned that, and it made me a better leader. Financially secure. That's an important part of transformational leadership as well. And then, how significant are you in your current position? When you begin to feel like you've lost significance, it's time to move on. It's time to try to find something else for you to do. And I'm happy to, if you ask Doane, they can send you the slides if there's anything on there that you have an interest in. Okay, duress is common, right? We're all under stress. Who sleeps 8 hours a day? Wow. And you like change? That's awesome. Who's less than 6 hours a day? Bad. Who doesn't know how many hours of sleep they're going to get? It goes day to day. Who wakes up in the middle of the night, looks at the clock at least twice, and can't believe how early it is? I do that every single day. Here's what we know about that. Stress. Stress is big. To the degree that we can disengage from stress of our work, it's going to impact our ability to be healthy. We're products of our family of origin. Who grew up in a 2-parent nuclear family? Who's the oldest in the family? Perfectionists, brown-nosers, all got A's. Who's the baby of the family? Yeah, if your parents would have had you first, they wouldn't have had a second or a third, right? the rebel of the family. So we know that our origin, our DNA, we can't ever escape that. And I've done a lot of processing on that. I told you about my parents. Neither one of them had a college education or high school education. And yet education became something that they instilled in me. We're products of our family of origin. We're emotionally intelligent. I'm going to finish up here pretty quick. In fact, I'm going to stop on this one. When you're transformational, you transform the lives of other people. Kids, colleagues, spouses, significant others, friends. But we have to be genuine and legitimate about that. And we can only do that, ladies and gentlemen, when we know who we are. Because too often people don't know who they really are. And when I meet people now, I absolutely have to know who they are before I let them in. And that includes people who we hire, who we work with, who I meet as part of an event or a trip. I have to know who they are. And I can't do that unless I know who I am. And that's the authenticity that leaders absolutely have to demonstrate every step of the way. And so I'd like to tell you leadership is easy. I'll tell you that there are a whole bunch of days when I pinch myself in Lincoln over the last 12 years and I said, how did I get this? How am I so blessed to be in Lincoln? Because I truly look around a school system and I say, this is a school system that's on all cylinders. And people who view the work as a mission, not just a job. And my job is to make sure that they know that they're appreciated for the work that they're doing. And so as I get ready to wrap this up, let me just say that it's okay to be a perfectionist. It's okay to be the second born in the family. It's okay to question things. But at the end of the day, build your life around what you believe. Model that. And you'll find that you will become that person of influence that you strive to be. And when you get to be where I am, at the age of 67, with a lot of years and where Doug is and some of the others, where my former offensive line coach was, and where Roger Hughes is going to be taking Doane. When you're done, when that journey's done, the legacy continues. You see, Jim Collins is the most important lesson from Jim Collins that I got. Good to Great book. If you haven't read it, it's my Bible. I use it all the time. It's not what the organization does when you're there. It's what happens to the organization when you leave. It isn't so much the kids in your classroom, what they did that year. It's what kind of students and people did they become when you left. And as a person of influence, that's the pride that you take. Because that's why we're in the greatest profession. We get to do that multiple times, every single day. And not a lot of occupations can lay claim to that. So I want to thank you for, one, being here, two, for the work that you're doing, and I hope you can continue to find purpose, and I hope that you can continue to think about your give backs. And let me answer the most popular question that I get is what am I going to do in retirement? Because people who know me know I want to follow critics out to the parking lot, right? So it's going to be really hard for me to shut things off. I think I'm going to make up a fake name in Twitter and try to set the record straight in social media. Probably not. My number one goal is to go to the gym at 8 in the morning instead of 5:30 in the morning. I'm going to do that on July 1st, and here's why. At 5:30 in the morning, it's crowded with a whole bunch of millennials that are getting ready to go to work. They're all on their phones. It really annoys me that they spend more time trying to get the right playlist than they are working through the work. You know what I'm talking about, right? Spring break, 3 weeks ago, experiment. Let me go at 9 and see what it's like. It was dead 9 o'clock It was dead, too lonely for me. So I said, well, let me try 8:30, a few more people. 8:15, perfect. Senior citizens, no cell phones. I got in and out in 45 minutes. So that's number one goal. Second goal is I'm going to turn my alarm clock off, even though it never wakes me up. I don't want to have to look at it and see how many more hours of sleep I have before I have to go to work. I have some consulting opportunities that have come my way, and I want to be looking to continue. But I will tell you this, as I sign off, I will be the biggest cheerleader for education and education leaders that exists. So keep up the great work, never surrender, stay grounded, be transformational, be ready for those pivot points when they occur. And at the end of the day, stand for what you believe and be willing to take the punches that come with that. And I promise you, when you get to be 67 and you step back, you're going to say, it was an impactful and purposeful life. So with that, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Good afternoon again. If we can get the rowdy people that are standing in the aisles to sit down, please. Well, again, thank you for all of you who came back, and those of you who are just joining us. This has been a very rewarding series on leadership, and we are anxious to continue it with Dr. Josh McDowell. He has served as superintendent in the Crete Public Schools, for the past 3 years. He's overhauled the after-school program and added First Flight, which is a program designed to provide access to athletic programs at little or no cost to students. He believes that education is the great equalizer, and that the public education was a saving grace for him, and that's part of his story, and so I'm anxious to hear that. He served as a chief academic officer and chief transformational officer in the Grand Island Schools. He's a 1999 Doane graduate, a master's degree from Doane, and a PhD from Creighton University. Josh McDowell.
Shot, one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted in one moment. Did you capture it? Just let it slip. Yo. His palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. There's vomit on his sweater already. Mom's spaghetti, he's nervous, but on the surface he looks calm and ready to drop bombs. But he keeps on forgetting what he wrote down. The whole crowd goes so loud, he opens his mouth, but the words won't come out. He's choking how? Everybody's choking now. The clock's run out, time's up, over, loud. Snap back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity. Oh, there goes gravity. Choke. He's so mad, but he won't give up. Daddies, he know he won't have it. He knows his whole back to these ropes. It don't matter. He's dope. He knows that.
That's the question today. Are you uncomfortable?
When he goes back to this mobile home.
Because if we're going to get anywhere together today, I need you to be uncomfortable. Or you've already heard it. And I don't know if it's the good thing or the bad thing about being the person before dinner, but there were two phenomenal leaders who followed me who've already talked about everything I'm going to talk about. Right? So get uncomfortable, get ready to get uncomfortable. But here's the other thing. Do you walk into work, whatever it is, every day as excited as some of the things we're going to watch right now? I get pumped. I like sitting backstage getting ready for this is just awesome. Like, this is my zone. But do you get as excited as this? Oh, skipped one. Technical difficulties.
Taylor and Brown on their way to the mound, and this could be all for Harris. He has pitched a beauty.
How's the hold, Eddie? Look a little tired.
I'm throwing every piece of junk I can think of at him, Skipper. I got enough left for one more hitter.
Nah, you pitched a hell of a game, man. Take a seat and we'll see if we can get this guy out for you.
Good game, Eddie.
Give me Vaughn.
You want Vaughn?
I know he hadn't done very well against this guy, but I got a hunch he's due.
Good job.
And we had to stop there, right? If you've seen the movie, had to cut the clip. Now, I'm telling you, we're not going to just sit and watch videos and listen to music, because I don't want to be that guy that Dr. Joel is talking about on the treadmill trying to find my right playlist. I think I've got it, but I want you to be excited. I want you to start to think about your walk-up song. And I think one of the greatest things we have to do as leaders is be transparent. And what I'm doing now is hopefully teaching you a little bit about me. We're a product of the 90s, so that movie, phenomenal. I can't remember when I finally got to watch the unrated version, right? Because there's more swear words in that movie than any other, right? But I also remember sitting on my living room floor watching the NBA on NBC because I couldn't wait to see this. See, it still sends chills down my spine, right? Like, that's so exciting. And see, our kids today deserve and need that much excitement from us as educators. The people you work with need that much excitement. So I want you to take a minute, like literally, I want you to think about it. And what's your walk-up song? What gets you pumped? What gets you ready for the day? Earlier, Lisa talked about our worst day can be somebody's best day, right? We're there to help them. What's your walk-up song? Think about it. Tell the person sitting next to you right now, what's your walk-up song? What would it be? All right, any brave souls? What is it? Yell it out. Fancy like. There you go. Like that. Are you on TikTok? I mean, that's awesome. There you go. Give me one more. AC/DC. Anything AC/DC. Right, so I want you to be uncomfortable. I want you to think about what excites you. And again, we're going to get to, but I want to share a little bit more about me. So as I was picking that, right, the playlist is long. I have a 16-year-old son who shares music with me all the time, so my playlists get even longer, so I struggle to find and think about what it is that really gets me hyped up. Now, what you've heard so far does, but if I was being honest, there are also other songs that have tremendous meaning to me and what I do. So here's another one. This one's better if you sing along too, by the way. Anybody know it?
Lazy yellow moon coming up tonight, shining through the trees. Crickets I sing.
So I choose that song because we have to find our meaning, we have to know our why, and we want to know those things that are important to us. I choose that song because it's the one song that if I'm at a wedding reception, I'm guaranteed to dance with my wife. Every time. Now, there's other things that it's really interesting. We're actually just celebrating Admin Professionals Day in our office, and we celebrated a day early on Tuesday. And the staff couldn't stop talking about the music that I listen to, because there are times when I'm working in my office that Jennifer, my executive assistant, she'll come and close my door because I didn't, it was a little loud. But here's one that I think surprises a lot of people. See, I don't know what it is. It's a stereotype. It's what, but people don't think I'm a 90s rapper. But I am. So why a walk-up song? Why this idea of being excited? We've already talked about knowing your why and your purpose and finding meaning in what we do. I think it's so important that we take a step back and reflect on where we've been and where we need to go. And so when I think about that, I think about 2019. I'm finishing my third year in Crete Public Schools. I knew that I wanted to be a superintendent at some point in time, and as Dr. Joel mentioned earlier, it is about finding the right fit. Where can you go make a difference? And I knew that Crete was that place for me. See, I grew up in Grand Island. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Spent 16 years there. Crete was the next place that I'd lived the longest as an undergrad student here at Doane. And so it was easy to come home. So just imagine the excitement that I had. 2019, all right, I made it, finally. I get to be a superintendent, because there were multiple failures before that. Finalist, finalist, finalist. Right, so here's what you learn in the superintendent's world. If your cell phone has the number of the consulting firm, you didn't get the job. He's shaking his head. It's true. But if it's the number of the board president, you did. And I remember that night that I got that call from Justin Kuntz. So super excited, couldn't wait to get to Crete to get started. Had a tremendous experience in Grand Island, felt like I was really prepared. But nothing could prepare us for what the end of the 2019-2020 school year brought, right? And we've talked about that. And no excuses. Love how Lisa talked about earlier. Stop talking about the pandemic. It has had a tremendous impact on all of us, on our kids and on our families. It was done to us. Now, how do we move forward? And I think about 21-22, I get to be the superintendent of Crete Public Schools. That's awesome. So, of course, I'm going to celebrate the things that we're doing here. But I want to try to talk about what it means for me in pictures as well. So that's my dog, Layla. Right, so like this is keynote presenter epic failures, right? So I've got video, I've got music, now I've got my pets. You're gonna see my family later, but it's all for a reason, right? So what I've just told Layla right there, honestly, I said, you wanna go for a walk? And look at her, she's excited, ears up, ready to rock and roll. That's 2019. We get to 2020, 2021, or right now, 21, 22. Sometimes it feels like that. Right? Now here's the deal. The first time I've actually used this picture in another presentation, my wife was in the audience. She's an educator as well. She came up to me like I know I'm going to get the critical feedback, but most of the time it's usually positive. But the first time she saw this picture is, when was Layla on the bed? Oh, right, it's the guest bed. She was gone, okay? But then I think about this. And what should make us excited as leaders even during the toughest times, right? So when you look at that picture, that's a year ago. But if you look really close, there's something in there that just stands out. It stood out to me. Look at them. They don't care, right? She's smiling ear to ear. You can tell even with her mask on. We're getting a thumbs up. And another just gigantic smile. They're excited. They're thrilled to death. And that's what they need from us every day. So today I want to talk about 2 leadership principles that I don't want to say that I've learned, but have been cleared up for me, or maybe more clearly defined over the last 3 years. The first one is you never know. So if we never know, how do we prepare for what we don't know? We're going to talk about it. The second thing is get comfortable being uncomfortable. Now, when we talk about getting uncomfortable or being uncomfortable, see, when I speak, I love to speak. Like there's just this, you get in the zone and you just know that's it. Had no idea who I was speaking to today, but the other day, about a week ago actually, I was getting ready to take Layla for a walk and this car stops by. It's Dr. Amy Burton. And Amy says, "Hey, see you're speaking at Doane." "Yeah, I am. I'm excited." She goes, "I'm going to just harass the heck out of you." So I said, "Here's how this works." Okay, well, thanks for the heads up, because now I'm coming after you before you get a chance to come after me. And two, I'm never nervous speaking to educators, speaking to leaders. She's a great leader, but man, you made me nervous. Like now I'm uncomfortable. Why? Why'd you have to do that? So now I can't wait in the yard. I'm getting ready to take Layla. I expect some feedback of some kind. Okay. All right. So I want you to take a look at this. I don't know if you were really listening to the lyrics. Again, I choose those for a reason, not just because they're meaningful to me, but there is a message in there. And if you think about it, 8 Mile, anybody know what 8 Mile is? It's the actual trailer park where Eminem grew up. How about Central Arkansas? Anybody catch that being said? It's where Scottie Pippen went to school. How about the California Penal League? Anybody watch Major League? Right? That's where Ricky Vaughn came from, right? He was in prison, right? Now, I get that one's fiction. How about Southeast Oklahoma State? Right? You never know. None of those are blue blood programs. There's one guy on that national championship team from, no offense to the other schools, but from a basketball program, right? North Carolina. You never know. So now here's the deal. As leaders, I think it's so important that we always know that everybody has a you never know story. As every other person, every other leader who's talked to you today, there is no reason for me to be standing on this stage today. Right? Statistically, I should not be here. So I grew up 1004 West John Street. Tiny duplex. Grew up with just my mom. We knew poverty, we knew it well. I remember 7th grade specifically that my friend Ethan, his mom, Pat, was there to pick us up after school at Barr Middle School. And I knew something was wrong then because, see, my mom always picked us up. My mom always picked me and Ethan up. She wasn't there that day. Well, she wasn't there that day because the car got repossessed. She had no way to come get us. Right? I know it. Lived it. But see, she was an amazing woman who taught me a lot. At the age, I was in 6th grade at that time, she had a decent job, right? She was an office manager for Robert's Dairy, now Highland Dairy, and cashed it all in and said, this is not what I want to do. Went back to school to become a nurse. Now, here's what you don't do. You see it all the time on the news. You don't give people who don't have money, right? I remember, and I don't know how I even knew, when she cashed in her retirement, she had $40,000. So we were going to live on $40,000 for the year while she went back to school, and we could. You don't give people who've never had money that kind of money, right? It was gone in no time. But you know what? She didn't give up, and neither did I. She kept working. She kept working. Eventually became a night nurse. She loved working nights. I think she would say a lot of the same things we've heard too. Loved working nights because nobody else is around. State's not there doing inspections. Most of the time people are sleeping, right? So loved working nights. But see, she worked at 6 at night till 6 in the morning from the time I was in 7th grade on. So if I was going to do my homework, I had to do it I had to do it myself. But there's just so many tremendous people that have come along in my life to help me be here. One of them is a Doane grad. So when you're looking at my house there, that duplex immediately to the left is the Tell residence, Ken Tell. Doane grad. probably very close to, maybe in your class even, Dr. Joel. See, Mr. Tell was my 6th grade teacher. And he's the reason I'm a teacher. And I remember the moment in 6th grade, we did so many cool things in 6th grade. It's not that you remember the lessons, but you remember how people treated you and the experiences they gave you. We're getting ready to dissect cow eyeballs, and I just remember him reaching into this box of eyeballs, and he pulled them out and he did this Cyclops thing. Like, I'll never forget that moment. That was it. I'm going to be a teacher. And then since then, I've had too many things that I don't deserve, right? There they are. My wife's an educator. Statistically, she shouldn't be a teacher either. She shouldn't have a college degree. Right? Mom dies when she's 14. Dad becomes an abusive alcoholic, marries somebody who literally beats the crap out of her. And it was our high school Spanish teacher, Mr. Westerby. I was in that class, we were taking a test, and she had marks. She physically strangled. And Mr. Westerby walked up and took the test from her and said, just see me after class. Threw it away. It wasn't about it wasn't about the test. It was about making sure she had what she needed. Got to talk about, I've already talked about the playlist, right? So my son is totally into music. Now, what's disappointing about his music is the stuff that we both enjoy, what we call it, right? So he sends me playlists, and like literally the Bone Thugs and Harmony that you heard earlier it's on the playlist that he's named Old School Rap. Come on, little help here, right? Oldies but Goodies is another one that we both enjoy. His oldies are the 80s. Right? And I'm like, come on, right? But they're awesome. But here's the deal. Public education is a great equalizer. You heard it in the introduction. I'm a product of public education. I'm a product of Grand Island Public Schools. I was a Wasmer Wildcat. We already talked about Kentel. Barr Middle School. Ron Moran, science teacher. He's the first one that grabbed me and said, hey, you should maybe think about track. Okay? Grand Island Senior High. Coach Fife, Coach Farron, Mr. Westerby. Right? All these people who are phenomenal leaders in their own right that are reaching out and making a difference in the lives of people. And that's what we all need to be doing, right? Leads me here. Had an opportunity on a track scholarship, come and run track. Dr. Joel's exactly right. I was not very talented. It was a long shot, but I got to stick it out. I'm going to tell the real story too here in a minute, by the way. But then I think about the people here. Coach Biley, Coach Phi, Coach Jenny, Rod Dirks, right? Is Dr. Sochek still in the room? He was here earlier. Dr. Sochek was here earlier. See, I wanted to teach science, but I had to take another class that was Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 2 hours. At that time, I'll talk about that in a minute, and I couldn't get everything in that I needed to get in. And so what Dr. Sochek did is he went out of his way. He said, all right, we're going to figure out how to get you endorsed to teach science, because I could teach language arts, I could teach social studies, but I wanted to teach science too. And so he set up opportunities for me to somehow co-op. I have no idea how it worked, and please don't revoke my degree now if it didn't work or wasn't supposed to work. But I took class at Peru, and I took class at Concordia to do what I needed to do to get that endorsement, because he said, if that's what you want to do, let's figure out how to make it happen. Right? Just amazing people. That's leadership. Now, the real story. And there's not very many times in your career or in your professional life where you get to acknowledge people that have had that kind of impact on you. So first clarification or correction. Sorry, I feel bad even correcting you, right? It's just not right. But it was not Iowa, and I'm not trying to get thrown out of the room now. It was at UNK. It was an indoor meet, and I had just run the 4x8, probably pretty slow, right? And Mel Joel, Dr. Joel's daughter, came up to me and said, my dad wants to meet you. And I'm thinking, okay, wait a minute. So Mel and I ran cross country together. We were friends. ran track together. But it's weird, why does Mel's dad want to meet me? Like, you know, Mel and I were buddies. We drank beer occasionally after we were 21, you know. But other than that, that was it. Like, I was nervous. And it was at UNK where Dr. Joel came up to me and said, hey, heard you're going to be a teacher. Yeah, I want to be a teacher. Make sure you apply at Grand Island. I want you there. Oh, right? It's really nice to be needed and wanted. And to have people do that, to go out of their way to reach out to you to say, all right, let's make this happen. Now, the next part of that story is he didn't hire me. All right, I applied, I'm excited, all right, I'm gonna be a teacher in Grand Island. Didn't get the job. Took me 2 years later. Taught in Kearney, great experience. But was excited to get back to my hometown. So went back to Barr Middle School, where I had went to school, teaching with people who taught me. It was awesome. But it was there that he came and found me again, and he said, what's the plan? And at this point, like, I don't know him the way I know him now. I'm like, sir, I don't know, sir, right? Like, here's the superintendent coming to talk. Like, I teach social studies, right? But I knew I wanted to be a leader, and he just kept, get your degree, get your degree, get your degree. 3 years later, I applied for the assistant principal job at Walnut Middle School. At that time, it was an amazing school, had a terrible reputation in town for no reason. Great school. And it was in that interview, he's sitting at one end of the table, I was sitting at the other end of the table, and then surrounded with all the other directors, that said, where do you want to be in 10 years? And I looked him dead in the eye and I said, your chair. And he said, let's make it happen. By let's make it happen, he meant he was going to hold me accountable. I would not have a doctorate degree if it was not for him. Held me accountable. That's what great leaders do. Provided support. I could have asked him for anything, and I know I could have got it. Just like today, I could call him at any time, and he's going to answer. So many times in 2019, I wanted to call him and say, how are you handling this? But I knew I'd get the same answer that every other superintendent had at that time. Hell, I don't know. Right? It was survival. So that's the idea. You never know. You never know the impact you're having. We live in a glass house. People are watching us all the time. You never know. Now let's talk about this pandemic for a minute. You never know. March 2020. Probably the first time I really remember getting criticism and a lot of questions that I didn't know how to answer. See, we found out, at least I did in Crete, Nebraska, that we didn't get to go back to school through a tweet that the governor had sent out. That was the heads up. That's it, on Twitter. How do you plan for that? How do you lead through that? I remember it was in the evening too. I remember sitting on the floor in my bedroom, was just like, are you kidding me? So what did we do? Surround yourself with great people. We brought 100+ people together across this community to put together our Return to Learn plan. We had weekly calls with Doane, Crete Area Medical Center, us, Crete Public Schools. We brought any teacher who was willing to come put together this plan. How are we going to return to school safely and still be effective? We then rolled that plan out to the community where we asked for their feedback. We wanted their honest, is this good? Because we didn't know. We're making the best decisions we could with the information we had at that time. But I tell you what, there's a ton of power in community. And there were a couple other things that were born out of that community feedback. Really, the feedback didn't change the plan a whole lot, but the feedback changed how we operated. Right out of that, every Friday, I admittedly have a voice for radio or a face for radio, but I put out a Friday update now, every Friday, and I have since the pandemic. Why? Because it's what they asked for. Communicate more. Let us decide if we're going to listen or not, but don't ever be on the side of under-communicating. It's great feedback. Engage the people around you to help you put the best plan together that you can. And that's what we did here. In the middle of the pandemic, we were also sticking to our values and what we believed, and we weren't going to move off of that. I really hold two beliefs firm that I'll fight for anytime. One, all means all. You heard the other two leaders say that. That's the beauty of public education. I don't get to decide who comes, and I don't get to tell them to leave. All means all. We'll take anybody who shows up, and we'll do anything we can for them. The second one is it's our job to remove barriers for families so they can be successful. I know it's because of all of the behind the scenes work, because of all the barriers that all of those teachers and coaches, family members, family friends that I came across that just kept removing barriers behind the scenes for me so that I could be successful. And so how do we repay that? In the middle of the pandemic, we decided, hey, we own this old Shopco, let's build something. Right, so we did. We built the Cardinal Welcome Center. And since its opening, basically on December 1 of this year, we've processed, and that sounds horrible, I gotta choose a different word, right? More than 250 families have come through that building to get the services they need so that we can help them remove barriers so their kids and them can be successful here. And it's only April, right? I'm talking January of this year. See, Crete's a great place. Crete Public Schools is incredibly unique. We really teach, as a lot of districts do, I guess, PK, actually pre-birth, through adults. Right? We're working with 47 families right now that have a child that's either unborn or less than 2, and there's a wait list. We'd serve more if we could. Right? Then they enter our preschool program. They continue with us, continue with us, continue with us. Then their parents get connected. Drive by our middle school in the evening, and that parking lot's packed. And it's not packed because they're there to watch middle school sports or the middle school play. It's adults that are going to school. It's adult ed. It's adult ELL. It's adult basic literacy. It's GED classes. But see, we're able to get families connected now because we held true to our values. We're going to remove barriers. That building has helped us. Now, on the other side of that, though, it's helped us and it's posing new challenges. Our homeless numbers are going up. Our migrant numbers are going up. But you know why? Because we know they're here now. Because everything starts here. We can get them the services they need. You heard a little bit about this, first flight. We know that the pandemic, and when you think back to everything you've heard from Lisa and Dr. Joel, that it's not just about academics, that the toll it took on families and on connections, on emotional health and physical health, and all of those things. 65% of the kids in Crete are on free and reduced lunch. They're economically disadvantaged. 55% are Hispanic. 55% are Hispanic. 26% are EL learners, right? Barriers, barriers, barriers. How do we remove them? How do we get them connected? And how do we really get at social, emotional, and physical health? Well, it's through First Flight.
Hi, I'm Dr. Josh McDowell, Superintendent for Crete Public Schools. I love our Cardinals, and I love all of the opportunities that we have to offer here at Crete Public Schools. We have a rich tradition of excellence, and we want to make sure that continues. And that's why I'm excited to announce today a new program, First Flight. First Flight is going to provide opportunities for all of our kids, kindergarten through 6th grade, to have the opportunity to get involved in sports, athletics, and activities at a much younger age. First Flight will be a fun and accessible program for all of our students. The focus of the program is get kids involved at an earlier age, teach fundamentals, but most importantly, have fun. It's our goal in Crete Public Schools to build First Flight out to offer opportunities for our K-6 kids to mirror the opportunities we offer for our high school students. So we'll continue to add activities like basketball, track and field, tennis, and then eventually move into offering opportunities like theater. And so we want to make sure that our kids have exposure to those opportunities in a safe, fun, and caring environment. At Crete Public Schools, we want to remove barriers for families. We want to connect with you, and First Flight's going to allow us to do that in a new and exciting way. But what do those connections look like? What does First Flight look like? It might be camps, it might be leagues, it might be weekend events. Whatever the event is, we're looking forward to the connection with students and with our families. Overall, we believe that the program will get kids and families more connected to school, living and leading a healthier lifestyle, and being connected to our high school when they get to that age. We're excited for these opportunities. Be on the lookout for our first kickoff event, which will be the week of October 18th, with a week-long basketball clinic led by our high school coaching staff. We are proud of our rich tradition of excellence. But before our students are Crete High Cardinals, they'll start right here with Crete Public Schools First Flight.
All means all. Remove barriers for families. We did it in spite of the pandemic, in spite of what was done to us. Now, it is exciting to be able to share this publicly, right? We launched First Flight this year. We started with basketball. 168 kids, kindergarten through 6th grade, participated free of charge. Right now in the springtime, it's a different experience, but kids get to experience track or golf or tennis and all of those things. Right now there's 155 kids signed up, right? All means all. Those experiences for every kid. Remove barriers for families. The other thing that we decided to do, look, right, if we're going to continue to remove those barriers, we hear so much about learning loss right now. But we haven't done anything different in 25 years. And when I say we, I don't mean Crete Public Schools, I mean the whole summer school experience, period. The pandemic brought that to light for us. And so what you see right there is the dashboard. I actually took that screenshot this morning. So we decided we're going to revamp this whole entire summer school experience for our kids. We're going to open it up to every kid and every family, kindergarten through 11th grade, free of charge. We're going to feed them breakfast, we're going to feed them lunch, and we're going to provide them transportation. And again, our community, our teachers, our staff have stepped up in huge ways. 211 camp opportunities over 8 weeks. We no longer go to school August through May. We go school August to August. You heard a little bit about the after-school program. Here's what I want you to think about. Tie it back to, why are we excited? What gives you, what's your walk-up song? What gets you excited to go to work every day? And then what are your beliefs? All means all. Remove barriers for families. So we went to work on an after-school program as well. We've had one for a long time, but again, the pandemic sheds light on how are we going to help kids connect more academically, socially, emotionally, physically. So over the last 2 years, if you look at that number, we've secured $5.3 million in grants to make it happen. Some of those are in kind, some of those are just additional things that come with grants. But what has that done for us? Daily participation, 421 kids is the average of regular attenders every day at Crete Elementary, Intermediate, Middle School, and the high school. We are one of 5 districts across the state that offer a high school program. You walk in that commons area now, it's packed after school. True story, crazy experience for me. Last day of school last year. It was my first last day, even though it was year 2, right? Got shut down in March. I go up to the high school because you know what, I want to say goodbye to kids, but I want to be there to help teachers and supervise and all that on that last day of school. And I was literally standing in the commons area, bell rings, school's out for summer, like I'm expecting this mass exodus. Didn't happen. That's where kids want to be. They don't want to go home. They want to be at Crete High. You never know. Now, the last part, and I got like 5 minutes. We're going to fly. All right, Get comfortable being uncomfortable. I wish I could claim that I can't. Bill Ekstrom. Here's where it came from.
Is to limit the way you think and act. Remember what I said earlier. Growth only occurs in a state of discomfort. Now think about the power of that phrase. Growth only occurs in a state of discomfort. I can unequivocally state I wouldn't be standing on this stage today without my uncomfortable or disrupting day 9 years ago.
Now, I'm not going to talk about that, but Bill lives in Lincoln. Amazing book, The Coaching Effect. We're only going to get better, and we're only going to grow in a state of discomfort. For us, as much as I'd love to say that as a superintendent and as a leader, maybe I was the catalyst to some of that discomfort, maybe I am. Like, you have to ask them in the back. But you know what? That pandemic caused a lot of discomfort that resulted in a lot of really good things for Crete Public Schools. But again, as we're doing all of those things, here's the deal, I'll fly through this. Chaos, we don't want to live in chaos, right? That was the pandemic on March 20th. Boom, it was chaotic. We didn't know. It was done to us. We didn't know what the outcome was going to be. How do we survive? We also don't want to live in stagnation, no growth. You know, it's the 7-year rule that Dr. Joel was talking about. In 7 years, you better reinvent yourself or you're obsolete. Right, so how do we find that happy medium between order, because that's where everybody wants to be. I don't want to say everybody, that's the commonplace everybody wants to be. We know what's going to happen. It's predictable, we know the outcome, we enjoy that. But how do we move into complexity where we're dealing with tough situations? Maybe we don't know the outcome, but we have the right people around the table to help us do that. Now, I talked about our values because the things I've highlighted so far, all means all, remove barriers. But we had to be grounded in the other things too. At the end of the day, it's about instruction. It's about academic achievement for kids so that they can be successful. And we never wavered from that either because we knew what it was. We knew that we were going to be standards-based. We knew we were data-driven. We knew our kids were going to be observably engaged. And we knew we were going to have a growth mindset. And that never wavered. We have to know that. And because we knew that, in spite of the pandemic, Crete Public Schools outperformed many, many districts across the state. I don't know if it's the first time, but it's the first time in a while we outperformed the state in math. We held our own in language arts. What I mean by held our own, we didn't go up, we didn't go down, in spite of the pandemic. The state average did. So, I love aviation, and I talk about all of those things that we've talked about, first flight, the after-school program, they're really, really important, but they're ancillary. Right? At the end of the day, we want kids to be academically successful, so we have to know those things. We are grounded in our instructional beliefs, and we knew our values. All means all, remove barriers for families. So I always use the airplane analogy as we set that. We knew what it was. It was our instructional beliefs. And the airplane analogy is this. Any air traffic controllers in the house? Okay, just checking, right? So here's the deal. As an air traffic controller, you're responsible for up to 20 airplanes at a time. They're all important. You got to keep them all in the air. You got to give them all instruction. You got to make sure they stay separated. But there's always one single most important airplane. Which one is it? My team knows. It's the one that's about to land. You got to get it down on the ground. Our one thing was our instructional beliefs. All those other things, ancillary, important. Social, emotional, physical well-being, all important. But our kids perform well because we're working hard to make sure they are well. I'm going to skip that. Very passionate about vision. And I define it very differently, I think. So what does this mean for leaders today? Number one, in our organization, in any organization, I believe the CEO, and I love how we talked about today, the CEO is the teacher in the classroom, it's the head custodian, it's anybody who can make a difference. That's everybody in this room. But you better be the lead learner. Can't be stagnant. Better be reflective, you better be vulnerable, and you better be genuine. I'll tell you a story about being vulnerable. The whole music thing at the beginning makes me crazy uncomfortable. It's really not my jam. I love music, but you know where that came from? my team back there, they challenged me. We were at administrator days and they said, hey, what's your walk-up song? Why not a walk-up song? Why not? Right? Let's skip that. So here's the deal. I want my team to stand up. So if you're a Crete Public Schools employee, stand up. And I see y'all back there. Stand up. Yeah. Because here's the deal. I don't do any of this. I get to be the storyteller. I get to talk about and tell about all of the awesome things that are happening in Crete Public Schools and what I believe can happen in public education, but they're the ones that make it happen every day, not me. So here's what I'm going to leave you with. The lyric at the beginning of the song. Look, if you had one shot or one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted in one moment, would you capture it or just let it slip by? Thank you.